This is a short 19-slide PowerPoint presentation about the only way that exists to create a pro-Trump Republican National Committee and how that is the main thing that conservatives ought to be focusing on doing. I was to present this at the American Priority Conference the weekend of December 8, 2018, but that did not come about. At the start, I was going to ask those in the audience, if you have represented your voting precinct at a party committee meeting to vote for the chairman and other officers of the party committee, whether at a local district committee or a county committee, or both, please stand up. Then after they stood up, if any, I would have gently grilled each who stood up with some vetting questions to find out if they truly understood the question or had stood up because they thought they were supposed to stand up. So I would have asked, for example, what's the name of your voting precinct? How many precinct committeeman slots does it have? Who is your party county committee chairman? What's the length of term of office of a precinct committeeman in your state, etc. As I've said, some might have stood up because they thought they ought to. No one likes to be put on the spot and look like they failed at something. So I would expect some to stand up either because they didn't understand the question or because they didn't want to appear to have failed to have done something political that they should have done. After that, I would have quickly gone over the following. I would have asked who was happy with having Michael Steele and then Reince Priebus and then Ronna Romney McDaniel as the RNC chairman. Then I would have asked the audience members if they knew how these three had become the RNC chairman. And then after we determined that the RNC elected them, how those RNC members came to be RNC members. Then once we established after a discussion that the RNC members get elected, I'd ask who gets to vote to elect those RNC members. Then after explaining that there are rules in the rules of the Republican Party that determine options for doing this, I would have explained who gets to do it in my state, Arizona. And then I would have asked for a show of hands for who in the audience would be voting to elect their state chairman this election cycle in their state. Then I would let them know that I was going to vote directly for who gets to be our Arizona GOP chairman in January to serve a 2-year term on the RNC. And that I have a 20-year-old daughter who is going to do so too, and an 18-year-old son too, who is going to get to do that. And then I would have explained that all we had to do to put us in that position was to get no more than 10 signatures on a form and turn it into the elections department. And then go to a single meeting that lasted about 3 hours where only 113 of the 150 precinct committeemen who could have shown up to vote did show up, and then be part of the top 50 vote getters. And we did that. And that by running together on a conservative basket of deplorables slate and having dear old dad, yours truly, when asked to stand up and explain that those young kids had helped get out the vote for our Republican candidates and wanted to serve along with the others on the slate, we were able to get ourselves into a position to directly vote for one of the 3 RNC members, who eventually will be one of the 168 RNC members who determine whether we have a Trump-supporting RNC chairman or not. So with all of that in mind, let's begin with the slides. So you've got the first slide in front of you. And these were the issues that were going to be discussed at the American Priority Conference. So take a look and read them. See, they were going to talk about veterans and national security and social justice in comics and movies and the homeless in America, etc., etc., etc. You can see them all. And really, the question is, which of these need people in government to get the policies related to these issues properly addressed. So, is it fair to say that we all know what some of the problems are? And isn't the real question what we're going to do about them? Are we just going to engage in more talk and more articles and more memes? So I submit to you, don't you think the real question is that we ought to ask ourselves is what we propose to do about these issues? I'm going to tell you in this presentation what we can do about it. So I'm going to give you a strategy to best help get your issue resolved to your liking. And those of you, if any, listening to this who are already in the thick of it as precinct committeemen, you already know that this is the only way to do it. So the first step in fixing all of these issues and problems, the very first step is to get every precinct committeeman slot in the Republican Party filled with a conservative, and that means including you. So, another test question. How many precinct committeeman slots does the Republican Party have nationwide? Any guesses? Do you know how many Republican Party slots your voting precinct has, or your state has, or your county? Well, if your perception is that the Republican Party is at 100% strength, you're way off. It's actually at less than half strength. In Arizona, where I'm from, we're at about 35% strength. So we have only about 1 out of every 300 Republicans actively engaged in the party apparatus in their voting precinct. Let that sink in. And keep this in mind. Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, the Freedom Caucus members, they like that just fine. Why? Because it's not in their best interest to change the status quo. Even the few real conservatives that are in office won't encourage you to become precinct committeemen. Why? Because precinct committeemen are at their most powerful when the next primary election rolls around. If a better, more conservative challenger comes out of the woodwork to challenge a do-nothing conservative, those conservative precinct committeemen might end up helping the new candidate get out the vote. So, mum's the word. This is a rather busy slide, but I'm going to talk you through it. So on the top is what I would refer to as the echo chamber that is heard only by Republicans who pay attention to politics. That echo chamber is all sorts of conservatives and conservative news outlets who are constantly telling their Republican and conservative audiences to go vote. So you've got Fox News, and then people on Twitter, and all the campaign mailers and TV ads and radio ads and robocalls and all the political the big PAC advertising, the political action committees, and Facebook people, and conservative talk radio, and round they go to the same audience, those people who listen to this stuff. And there's this, underneath that is this wall of political indifference. And these are the good, decent Republicans, many of them who are conservative, who just don't pay attention to that stuff. You know, they work, they love being Americans, and maybe they'll go vote, but they'll probably only go vote, since they don't pay attention to this echo chamber, only if they know who to vote for. So how do you get to those people? You've got to get to those people with a personal contact from a fellow Republican with a gentle reminder to go vote for these particular decent conservatives who are challenging either an incumbent in a primary or are going to defeat a Democrat in the general. And they'll only go vote, and it's about 60%, if they're contacted personally by somebody. And it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes all it takes is just a simple phone call from a neighbor. So recently, back in the fall of 2017, in one of his talks to a conservative group, Steve Bannon said, well, obviously we have to take over the Republican Party. Well, if that's so obvious, why aren't conservatives doing it? And what does it mean to take over? What does that look like? What does that actually happen? What has to happen for the takeover of the Republican Party? What is the Republican Party? The Republican Party is embodied in the Republican National Committee and the state party committees. The RNC has 168 members, 3 from each state, from DC, and from 5 territories. So how do we take over the RNC? Well, the good news is that the party is there for the taking by conservatives. On the left is what the party looks like right now. The small circle signifies that it's at half strength and it's ideologically split. About half of the precinct committeeman slots are filled. There's a total of 400,000, about 200,000 are filled, and about half are moderates and half are conservatives. The circle on the right shows what the party could be if conservatives would invade all those vacant precinct committeeman slots. We'd transform the party into a 100% strength and 75% conservative majority party with a really good amount of muscle to help get out the vote at the precinct level for the conservatives in the primary and the Republicans in the general elections. So this too is a somewhat busy chart, but I'll talk you through it. Again, keep in mind there's about 400,000 Republican Party precinct committeeman slots, and over half of them are vacant. If all of the people in these groups depicted on the chart, just 10% of each, would pivot and do one more thing for a few hours a year, the Tea Partiers, the Right to Life people, the Angel Mom people, I'm talking about veterans groups, Smart Girl Politics, I believe they still exist, all the Second Amendment people in the NRA and GOA, all the free marketers, the libertarian, conservative people who want free markets, again, all the pro-military veteran people, all of the evangelical Christians who are conservative, if they would just pivot and do one more thing in their political lives and go to their local Republican Party committee and tell them, I want to become a precinct committeeman, please teach me how to do it. If we did that, we could fill up the Republican Party with conservatives. This too is a rather busy chart, but I'll talk you through it. It basically depicts how in Arizona, the Arizona Republican Party precinct committeeman is very powerful because the precinct committeemen elect the electors of the 3 Arizona GOP RNC members, The precinct committeemen come together, and after getting elected in August, they go to a meeting, an organizational meeting, where they elect the committee officers, and one of their number gets elected as a state committeeman. So on the right side of the chart, the state committeemen that were elected in the organizational meetings at the legislative district committee level go on to vote directly for the Arizona GOP chairman, and he serves on the RNC. On the left side of the chart, the precinct committeemen also elect in the presidential election year at their district committee caucus meetings the delegates to the presidential nominating convention. Those delegates go on to the state convention and they elect the national committee woman, the national committee man, and to 4-year terms on the RNC, and that's very powerful. They also elect at the state convention the delegates to the national convention. Very powerful position, and a position that the RNC doesn't want you to know about, nor do any of the other people in the party hierarchy, because the precinct committeeman has been called the most powerful political office in the world, and this is the reason why. So again, I hope I've convinced you. The first step in changing things politically, if you're a conservative, is to get every precinct committeeman slot in the Republican Party filled by a conservative, and that means filled by you. So here's the big question. What can each of us do to fix our government? If we only had about 3 hours a month to devote to politics, and think about how much time you spend on the internet doing things politically, political activism on the internet. If we only had 3 hours a month, how best to use that time? That's the question. So there's no one person who's going to do this for us. We, the people, have to fix it. It's in the preamble to the Constitution, we the people. With good old-fashioned American civic action, we can do it. It's our duty as Americans to do this for ourselves and our kids. So again, a busy slide, but this is an important one. Nobody's coming to save us. Most Tea Partiers never got this. They thought rallies worked. They don't. Screaming at Congress critters at town hall meetings doesn't work. Online petitions don't work. Public policy groups don't work. The progressives, the leftists, the rhinos, they do not care what is said to them by anyone. The only way to take back our government is to elect better people. The only way to elect better people is to have conservatives running the Republican Party and getting out the vote for the better people. The only way to have conservatives running the Republican Party is to have a majority of conservatives in the party voting slots. And the only way we can make that happen is to have we, the conservative Republican Party precinct committeemen people in charge of our party, period. End of story. That's what we have to do, and it's up to you. So again, I hope you're tired of this slide, but it's the important one, and I hope it's effective. Every precinct committeeman slot in the Republican Party has to get filled by a conservative, and that means you. So, you conservatives, keep calm, you deplorable swamp drainers, and keep recruiting Trump supporters to become Republican Party precinct committeemen to drain the GOP establishment swamp. I wish President Trump would talk about this at his rallies. He doesn't. I've sent him a copy of my book. I hope he read it. I doubt he has. I also have sent it to others who have the ear of the president, but so far this is not happening. So it's up to us. So this is the last slide in the presentation. Here are some links to find more information. There's the title of my book on Amazon that I mentioned. It's very short. It's very inexpensive. It tells you exactly what to do. There's my precinct project blog, which again tells you everything that you need to do. Below that is beapc.com, which a precinct committeeman did in Maricopa County that tells you how to become a precinct committeeman in Maricopa County. There's our Maricopa County GOP.com website. The book Takeover by Richard Vigory has my strategy, this strategy in it, and there's the URL for almost all of my articles at Breitbart.com about this subject, and there's my contact information if you want to get in contact with me. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope you'll take it to heart. I hope you will become a precinct committeeman, and thank you for listening and watching. Bye.